if anyone has a conflict, would they please declare? Seeing none, I'll ask for the adoption of the agenda, and we have two amendments. One is item 7.3, where there's been some corrections to the original edition of the minutes of our special meeting that happened last week, and those minutes are on the agenda as item 7.3. We also have an addition of 12.2, which is release of in-camera resolutions. So if there are no further amendments, I'll ask for adoption of the agenda. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. We do have two delegations tonight, and if Leonard Pauly will come to the microphone and push the button, I will turn on the mic. And a reminder that we have a very full agenda, so I'm going to ask that you stick to, at the most, 10 minutes. Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Pauly.
So I push the... No, it's done. Okay. It's all right? Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Council, for the time you're allowing me. I timed this to 6.5 minutes, so hopefully you have questions. I cut out a lot with regards to it to allow me the timing. Dear sirs and madams, my application for the flood control exemption at 5830 Marine Way is supported by the geotechnical reports listed in the report from the staff to the PCDC dated November 10th, 2017. There are also detailed analysis reports dated March 7th, 2016, and included in a 127-page comprehensive geotechnical report dated July 2016 from Western Geotechnical Consultants, which were not included in your report. I mention this to assure Council that this application has been fully supported, peer-reviewed by Thurber, and scrutinized professionally. Regarding the DOS staff report, with regards to the PCDC, there is a slight error within the report on page 103, page 1. It cites in which the engineer certifies that lot 105 may be safely used despite the hazards of ocean flooding. There is no mention in this area being in an oceanic floodplain zone within any of the geotechnical reports. The September report, page 4, cites the subject lot is not susceptible to overland flooding due to the lack of substantial surface water. In the March 2016 report on page 6, it cites, thus, the site is not susceptible to oceanic flooding. There is no mention of that this area is susceptible to oceanic flooding, and in the fact, this area is not within oceanic flooding, i.e. Mackenzie Marina outbuildings and the sewer pumping station would be in jeopardy if it was. There is also an error on the site development plans submitted to the PCDC based upon the September 24th geotechnical report, which should have been the site development plan submitted June 2017 with my second application and based upon revision 15 of the civil drawings. There are multiple environmental reports also supporting my development and approving the 5-meter setback from top of bank, which I'll refer to as TOB, is cited in the PCDC report, including the July 2015 report from TRI Environmental Consulting, which is supported by Dave Bates, your environmental peer review consultant, in a memorandum dated May 25th, 2016, to which all parties agreed to the guidelines addressing the foreshore. These guidelines from Dave Bates and referenced from the TRI environmental report also address the concerns mentioned by the Sechelt nations in their report dated July 14, 2017 to the DOS. I would also like to make note that the Sechelt nations supported both my floodplains exemption and development permit, acknowledging the numerous environmental reports and geotechnical report studies I have done. I ask Council that they take into account findings in the geotechnical engineer. Floodplains exemption is not a zoning matter dealing with issues of land use, excessive heights, setbacks, etc. Floodplains exemption orders usually include a safe, harmless covenant protecting council from liability caused by flooding, which is ensured by professional reports. This is supported when council granted signing authority to the Director of Development Services for the Floodplains Control, which was adopted March 19, 2014, such that they review and grant the floodplains exemption based upon the professional reports submitted. The request for the relaxation of the floodplains to 5-meter setback referenced to the top of bank is due to the topography of the land and varies in elevation between 2.5 to 4 meters above the beach, while the natural boundary varies in distance from the top of bank by 2 to 4 meters. So you have the top of bank. You have 2 to 4 meters in height from the beach, and the top of bank is not the natural boundary. It is set away from the natural boundary. So it varies, right? The request, this means that the relaxation of the floodplains will vary in distance by more than 5 meters from the natural boundary so that the building sites will not be 5 meters from the water. As the top of bank is jagged, in some areas the houses will have to be built further away than the 5-meter setback to do a practicality of the house footprint. The request to relax the floodplains exemption is primarily due to the irregular shape of the property and allowing a 7-lot subdivision to proceed on a 1.45 acres of land, which, if the land was rectangular in shape, it would hold nearly 12 lots because it's R1 zoned. The site layout and development, including density, is within the bylaws of R1 zoning. If this development were not within accordance with the zoning, densities, and bylaws of the DOS, then my first application dated March 2014, the 15 engineering revision drawings covered over a period of 2 years, multiple geotechnical reports, 5 environmental reports, including peer reviews, would not have brought me to the near completion of the application on October 2016. Furthermore, during that time, I was kindly granted to develop various permits September 2015 by council on issues of street lighting, addressing parking, hammerhead, to which council was aware of site layout, density, roadworks, but unaware any other issues and misinformed that this development did not have to go before council. Therefore, I would ask that you also consider the full history and extent to which I have complied with everything requested by the DOS staff for the last 4 years when I'm within my own zoning. This is further evident by the DOS staff being in support of this relaxation of the floodplains and my development to proceed, as they also know the history, the length of time we all, staff and myself, have taken to assure that this development meets all guidelines. Bylaw 430, pages 9 to 10, section 9C, suitability of proposed subdivision. Final approval shall not be given by the approving officer to a subdivision application unless the proposed lot layout is, I cite 9C, does not make impractical the future subdivision of the land within the proposed subdivision or subdivision of any other adjacent land. This section of the bylaw attempts to ensure the best use of the land, and by not granting the floodplains exemption will not allow 6 additional families to enjoy this area in the future, as you can see in this site. Do you have section 11 up? Do you have?
You're getting close to your time.
Okay. Anyways, what it does is you've got your floodplains exempt. You've got your 5-meter setback. If you, with the property R shaped, with the 5-meter setback, it can be built, but when you add another 10 meters on, it completely destroys the property with regards to development. I have a picture here. Pass that on. This section of the bylaw, okay, the district has issued floodplains exemption orders consistent with recommendations of a geotechnical engineer over the years, including 2 previous requests from other developments regarding floodplains exemption, which have had approval from all committees within 2016. The requirements from the DOS engineering and planning developments, including upgrading, stabilizing the new sidewalk, storm sewers, storm curves, drains, custom design, safety rail along sidewalk, LED lighting along Marineway, and providing a link between the sewer line and the Marineway to the foreshore and new roadway into the property is not economically feasible without the 5-meter setback from top of bank. The costs associated with improving engineering aspects of Marineway and building the new road when dealing with a small subdivision of this size is extensive to the point where a smaller subdivision makes it economically unsound. In the Planning Committee's report, there is a section regarding financial plan. This section fails to inform Council that the Marineway frontage abutting my property needs urgent upgrading with sidewalk lighting, curb gutter, safety rail to allow a safer roadway with vehicles and pedestrians. This development has been designed to address those issues at the cost of the developer without placing an economic burden on the DOS. The report should cite the costs associated with Marineway upgrades in its report, as the safety issues of this section of Marineway need to be addressed before another incident happens. The LGA adheres to a blanket guideline of 15-meter setback from the waterfront.
You'll have to wrap up.
Okay, I'm in my conclusion. My geological reports, which were peer-reviewed, environmental reports, have supported this application to allow a 5-meter setback top of bank. Both the floodplain setback and development permit have been supported by the Salish nations. I respectfully submit allowing the floodplains exemption will not affect the area in a negative manner, nor in the future, considering the amount of and type of developments already in the area. There's 3 marinas there. I furthermore request this exemption in consideration of the hardship I have experienced over the past 4 years, both financially and also my home life. I've lost my family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pauly. Do any members of council have questions?
Will we be getting a copy of that?
It's in our packet.
No. This is a 6.5-minute version. I understand.
I can give it to you right now.
No. Okay.
Okay.
It should be handed in then. If there's something different from what we've received.
Yeah, I can give it to you right now.
Okay.
I would have never finished if I hadn't cut it back.
Thank you. So no questions. And we'll move on to our second delegation. Mr. or Mrs. White, could you come forward?
Would it be all right if we brought a second chair?
I beg your pardon?
Would it be all right if we brought a second chair?
Yes, please do. Here, we've got one. And welcome, and I will ask too that you keep your presentation as quick as possible. We have a very large agenda.
I was a scout. I'll do my best. Councillors, staff, members of the gallery, thank you for hearing our delegation this evening. We represent the most seriously affected adjacent neighbors to this property. Sitting with me is Angie Darnborough, representing her family located to the northwest. My name is Ken White, representing my family to the southeast. For those councillors who are members of the Planning Committee, I apologize if you find elements of our presentation repetitive. Our desire is to ensure that you all have the deepest understanding of the issues involved. We're here to discuss your vote on the flood control exemption proposed for the poly development on Marineway. We endorse the well-researched decisions of 2 planning advisory commissions, and the unanimous call of the Planning Committee to reject this proposal. The district has been provided with professional assessments of flood risks for this development that provide no compelling argument promoting the reduction. The minimum ocean setback is set at 15 meters for a number of reasons, flood control being but one of them. Our OCP, DPA guidelines, and neighborhood plan for West Porpoise Bay all speak to this issue in multiple ways, and actually introduce the idea of increasing the standard. The relevant provincial legislation says that if there is supporting geotechnical data, the district may reduce the setback. It does not require the district to do so. We remind Council of documents we have submitted over the years detailing shortcomings of this proposed development, and that those submissions, including a citizen's petition, have never been challenged by the Planning Department staff, commission members, committee members, or council. It has been suggested that the Sechelt First Nations are in favor of the setback reduction. A more thorough examination of the response to referral from the Sechelt First Nation suggests that in the face of the setback already having been reduced, they require restoration of that 5-meter area, but would prefer to maintain the 15-meter setback. Let me speak about the negative impacts of reducing this setback. This property is situated adjacent to the outflow of Cook Creek, which is a salmon-bearing creek. A reduction of the setback will jeopardize the salmon that pool in the nearshore waters in front of the development. Those salmon have already been affected with the reduction of shade by logging. Salmon are forced to seek the cover of shade provided by trees on adjacent properties. Trees that will also be jeopardized if the development plan that relies on the flood control exemption is approved. With an approved flood control exemption, this development plan uses elements which fly in the face of provisions of the OCP, DPA, and neighborhood plan documents. Elements considered unacceptable in residential developments. Enough industrial-style concrete lock block that if laid end to end would stretch from this room to the other side of the intersection of Cowrie and Inlet. If it was poured as wet concrete, it would cover the entire development property, except for the paved areas, 3 inches thick. In direct contradiction to the OCP, instead of respecting the topography of the lot, the plan calls for extensive rock cutting, backfilling, and retaining walls, including approximately 295 concrete lock blocks. This development is the manifestation of the square peg in the round hole analogy. Simply increasing density does not result in best use of land. By squeezing in 7 barely standard-sized lots, despite the realities of topography and location on this steeply sloped property, the development has become a patchwork of extreme measures undermining the spirit and letter of the OCP, DPA, and West Porpoise Bay Neighborhood Plan. It's time that all developments in the district be held to the standards of accountability, sustainability, and good stewardship contained within the guiding documents under which developments are required to proceed. The current drawings show a statutory right-of-way which has been characterized as public access. But to clarify, district staff have confirmed that this corridor is a right-of-way for sewer infrastructure, remaining on title with Lot 7, and is not true public access. This is not an amenity being granted or given to the community to offset the desired public access originally envisioned. Comparing this development to the one across the bay or grandfathered marinas and commercial properties is irrelevant. The zoning here is R1, single-family dwellings. The maximum number of lots which this property can be subdivided into is a function of the overall property size, net of any specified setbacks. A variance to the ocean setback is being requested, which will effectively increase the number of lots which can be developed. The property owner states that the fewer number of lots possible without the variance makes the project uneconomic. The cost of developing this property is impacted by the challenges of topography and geology. This is not strictly the concern of council, but those costs could be reduced significantly by modifying the plan to conform to existing district standards and guidelines. This is the best and perhaps only opportunity in the development process for council to consider and reject the 67% proposed setback reduction. The immediate neighborhood of 9 waterfront homes and properties is comprised of parcels ranging from ½ acre to 4 acres and has a nature unique to waterfront properties. 2 of those 9 properties remain undeveloped, including the property under consideration here. These waterfront properties are the properties that will be negatively affected by this proposal. Our earlier submitted citizens' petition opposed to this development included signatures of residents on both sides of Marine Way, as well as adjacent neighbors. The district's OCP guides new developments to design their plans to complement existing setbacks. The other developed residential properties along this shore have adhered to the 15-meter setback. This is a clear opportunity for council to demonstrate their commitment to the OCP, DPA guidelines and the stated goals and objectives of the district's strategic plan and sustainability guiding principles, including, and I quote, to protect and enhance the ecological health of the marine waters, foreshore, and adjacent upland." End quote. This flood control exemption would clear the track for a development proposal hinging on the ability to build so close to shore. Exactly the kind of development district guidelines purport to prevent from negatively impacting our community and environment. We respectfully request that Council endorse the well-considered recommendations of the Planning Committee, as well as 2 advisory planning commissions, and deny this flood control exemption. On behalf of myself, my wife Sue, several of my neighbors here, Amy White, Christopher Thomas, Angela Darnborough, and Peter Darnborough, thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from council? I'm sorry. Oh, could we have copies of your presentation?
I brought one for the recording secretary. Is that fine?
Yes, that'll work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we move into business on our agenda, I would just like to take a bit of a liberty as the chair and remind everyone that today is the 28th anniversary of the Montreal Massacre, December 6th, when 14 beautiful young women were shot. And I just want us to think about that in the context of what's happening in our lives, and given an opportunity to show support to someone who might need it, I would ask you to do that. Thank you. So now we'll move to item 5.1, minutes of the 3 p.m. regular council meeting of November 15th. Could I have a motion to, thank you, to adopt those minutes? Seconder? Yes. Any comments? No. Everyone in favor? Thank you. 5.2, pages 39 to 46, minutes of the 7 p.m. regular council meeting of November 15th, 2017. Could I have a motion around those minutes? Yes. And a seconder. Thank you. Any comments or questions around those minutes at this time? All those in favor? Carried. Business arising from these minutes? Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we will move to item 7.1, committee, commission minutes and reports. The first being the Finance, Culture and Economic Development Committee meeting minutes of November 8th, 2017. There are, could we have a motion to accept these minutes? Accept and adopt? Sure. And we also have recommendations 2 to 15, and then we jump to 18. Could I move all those? Thank you very much. Seconder? Thank you, Noel. All those in favor? Carried. Item 7.2, minutes of the Planning and Community Development meeting, pages 53 to 63, November 22nd. Could I have a motion to receive? Move receipt, seconded. All those in favor of receipt? Thank you. So we have recommendations in this, and I understand that we have a motion to pull. Which item?
I'd like to pull number 14 and number 17 for separate consideration, please.
I'm sorry, for...
14 and 17.
Okay. So is there a motion to move recommendations 1 through 22 with the omission of 17
And 14.
and 14?
So moved.
Seconded?
All recommendations except 14 and 17.
Did we get a seconder to pull those?
Don't need a seconder to pull them.
But when we come to reconsider, there is. Okay, we have recommendation number 14, that the Planning and Community Development Committee recommend to Council that the proposed flood control exemption be denied. Is there a motion around this? Yes.
I'd like to discuss it.
We need a motion to,
It would be preferable, yes, to
Okay.
have the motion come forward on the table or another one, and then that be discussed.
so it's been moved. Is there a seconder? Okay, so the motion's been moved and seconded. We'll have a discussion.
Okay, thank you. So I went and met with the planning staff actually around this one, because at the meeting, I voted in favor of denying this. So I needed, before it came to this meeting and we actually made the final decision, I wanted to get more clarity around it. So when I met with staff, I asked about the 15 meters. And we all know about 15-meter riparian zone, et cetera. This is talking about floodplain. So for this development, there was a geotechnical assessment done. We, as the district, had that geotechnical report peer reviewed. So we sent it out to get it reviewed as well to ensure that what was in that we could stand behind. Then it also had an environmental report done, which we also got peer reviewed. And in all cases, all 4 professionals recommended that the floodplain could be relaxed with no damage to the properties built on, so long as in a certain area there were materials that could be potentially damaged by water. Our staff then came forward and said they were in support of this, given that the technical experts had actually supported it. So I have to actually change my stand on this. I'm not a geotechnical or an environmental expert, and I have to support what they have come forward and told us. So I would not be in favor of denying this now, given the information that staff have given me.
Thank you. Comments?
Yes, thank you. As chair of that committee, I wasn't actually able to put my views really on the table. I was more busy chairing the meeting, of course, and what I've heard from Councillor Seegers just now to me is not new information. This is perhaps more research done on the same information, but it's not new information. For myself, given on this particular issue, this is one of those situations. We have given some flood control exemptions to properties that wanted types of buildings built on existing lots, and they were of a different character than this one. This is one where there's a potential for unbuildable lots by our standards to go forward and creating new lots on that basis. So I'm not in favor of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Shanks.
Seems like we all had a chat with the planner on this particular issue. So in view of the fact that we've had 2 delegations tonight in terms of this one particular topic, I would hope that there is in fact an agenda item coming forward to the next planning committee meeting that will address the issues that have been brought up at the last meeting where we dealt with this. So we don't normally make a decision on these delegations, and this is the very thing that we're dealing with right now.
I'll turn to the corporate officer. Tonight, we're dealing with a resolution, a recommendation to council. Do we not deal with it here and now?
Council's practice is to not make decisions while the delegation is at the delegation table during that section of the agenda. You have now heard both delegations, and it would be completely appropriate to consider the planning committee minutes that are in front of you in terms of endorsing recommendations from that committee.
Yes, Councillor Cedars.
Thank you. Further to Councillor Shank's comments, are you looking to have the information from the delegations in front of us and be able to review that before voting on this? Is that what you're aiming at?
There's sufficient confusion about the issue that we were dealing with, as you found out through talking with the planner, that I would like to see a further report come forward as a result of what's transpiring tonight and the delegations that have come before us.
We do have a motion in front of us. We've pulled it. We've had discussion. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So is this another report that we should be deferring back to the administration to bring it back to us so that we have the correct recommendation coming from the administration to us so that we can make the decision? Or are we going to try and do this on the fly again?
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I would think that because we have a motion in front of us, that we can vote on that and we'll see where the councillor's at. Yes. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. This is a process question through our corporate officer. Given the motions on the floor now, can we still do a motion to defer this perhaps to the next meeting?
Process perspective, you've got this motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. It would be appropriate. It can be deferred. Voted, if somebody moves deferral and someone seconds it and that gets voted on and passed, it can be deferred. There's no discussion on deferral, but some clarity around deferred for what reason or until when would be appropriate under Robert's rules.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to defer this to the next council meeting, at which point we'd like the further clarity from staff and the supporting documentation from the presenters.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Oh, point of order.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I believe that the motion that's on the table is the motion to pull this from the block. It's not, and we haven't voted on that, so it hasn't been pulled yet.
Yes, it was pulled.
Madam Chair, it was pulled. There was an earlier direction to have it be considered separately, but right now, recommendation number 14 has been moved and seconded. The recommendation.
If that was my mistake, I don't recall the vote. I remember Councillor Inkster seconding it, but I do not recall the vote. But that's.
Wait, I'll have corporate clarified, please.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Did we vote on
Pulling?
Pulling.
It's not necessary to vote on pulling. Pulling it's in the procedure bylaw, and it's a procedural matter. Councillors have a right to request that items that are all together be pulled and considered separately. And council's usual practice is just ask to have them pulled and dealt with separately, and that's what happens.
Thank you. So we have a motion to defer dealing with this recommendation. And that's all done legally. We don't vote. Yes.
You do vote.
Vote on deferral.
There's no discussion. It's been, what I have is deferred to next council meeting to bring forward a report from staff along with the materials that were distributed by tonight's delegations.
Thank you. All those in favor? Oh, seconder for deferral.
Sorry, Madam Chair. You need a seconder for the deferral motion, and I'll second that. And then that means that there is no discussion on a deferral motion. Thank you.
All those in favor of deferral? Opposed? Thank you. It's carried. So now we have recommendation number 17 that has been asked to be pulled, and that is regarding a temporary use permit for pedals and paddles, and it's a very long recommendation. Okay, Councillor Seegers has moved the recommendation. Is there a seconder for the existing recommendation? Okay. Yes, Councillor Seegers.
Yes, I had a question about the condition D. It says a potable water service and metering must be brought onto the site. An existing fire hydrant on the site must be restored to its original state for use during emergencies only. I believe we got some additional information from the proponent around that the fire hydrant is actually a private fire hydrant and that the fire department does not have any issue with the way they're using water. So I'm wondering what staff's response was to that further information that came forward.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the council. Yes, there was some statement made that it is a private water hydrant. It is still regional district water service, and as a commercial business, they should be metered in any kind of water use that's coming off of there. So under the regulations, they should have a water meter and a proper service for the water to be used.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments around this recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation as it stands? Opposed? None. Thank you. So now we are to item 7.3, and this is the one where the minutes have been amended from the Special Planning and Community Development Committee meeting of Wednesday, November 22nd. That whole agenda was around water, and there were some things that had to be corrected within those minutes. That's been done. The amended minutes are available. We've all had them. We'll start with receiving these minutes. Moved, seconded. All those in favor of receipt? Thank you. Now, I'm understanding that. Oh, we have further amendments. And what would those be, please?
Thank you. On page 65, under 6.1, Jeanette Lovies, her name has an S on the end. Also in attendance was Dave Crosby. And then the first bullet, it says the town of Gibsons is under a bulk water purchase contract. Part of the town of Gibsons is serviced under a bulk water purchase contract. So I think that sentence should be modified. Because the upper part of Gibsons, right, is serviced under a bulk water purchase contract. The lower part is actually, the town of Gibsons actually provide their own water. Through their aquifer, okay. Yes.
Anything further?
No, those are all the changes, thank you.
Okay, now that we have amended those yet again.
Just for clarification, I believe Dave Crosby is now a consultant to the SCRD. He's on contract. So that's why his name was left off.
All right. Thank you for the clarification. Now, I know that that meeting was very informative to our community and to all of us on council. And I know that there's possibly some action to come out of that meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. If I could pull these items for discussion under business arising from the minutes.
Certainly.
Does that require a vote?
You can do it now if you like.
Require a vote?
No.
Okay. So anybody who attended that meeting knows that there was a lot of substance to it. There was a lot for council to consider. We didn't make any motions or resolutions at the meeting. It was more for information, and I know that at that meeting I said I wanted to provide council with an opportunity for full council to make a vote on the items that were contained there. So we waited for this particular venue to do that, and I've circulated a draft resolution to council and received a bit of comment back, but I would like now to make that resolution and receive council's input.
If you would read it, please.
Certainly. So this is recognizing the critical importance of a sufficient water supply to meet the needs of the Sunshine Coast community, especially in times of drought. Acknowledging that in recent years, SCRD water supply has faced numerous challenges to meet community needs, including severe drought and widespread water usage restrictions. Council affirms that securing an adequate water supply on behalf of our community is the top priority of District of Sechelt directors at the SCRD board, and that council directs staff to write a letter to SCRD CAO Janet Lubbies advising of this resolution and requesting that all reasonable and expeditious measures be taken to secure an expanded water supply on behalf of the District of Sechelt taxpayers and citizens.
A seconder? Everybody seconds it. I'll ask that that be given to our assistant for notation into the minutes. Yes. Councillor Inkster.
Thank you. So I'm glad to see, I was looking forward to a resolution the day of the meeting from the 5 members of the committee. Waited for that at the end, but that's fine. It has come now after careful consideration by the committee members and brought forward from the chair to make sure that we not only now but in future pursue that as a plan of action. I'm certainly in support of it because that's what I've been talking about for the last number of months at that table. So it's good to see that we have some council support to that approach, but also moving forward over the next year or so that we continue to make sure that we impress upon our representatives that that's an important issue for our community to secure a continuous water source, secure and stored. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Thank you. Item 7.4, minutes of the Public Works, Parks and Environment Committee meeting of November 22nd, 2017. Move receipt. Moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
Thank you. Under appointments and delegations, second last line on the first page, the proposed spot, just a spelling error. That's everything. Thank you.
Thank you. We have recommendations in these minutes. Will anyone move recommendations 1 through 11? Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions around those motions?
Yeah, question on page 69. It says that a mechanical engineer is needed to assess the heating and cooling issues in the municipal hall. Are we looking into that? I don't know if staff here can actually answer that, but perhaps they could get back to us on that. Okay, thank you.
I see nods from staff. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of those recommendations? Thank you. Now we move to bylaws for first reading. Pages 72 to 89. Item 8.1. And this is a report from our municipal planner. I will ask for receipt, please. Moved and seconded. And turn to our planner to, better vote. All in favor of receipt. Thank you. They're keeping me in line. Yes, Ms. Letman.
So before you, you have a bylaw for first reading. It's Amendment Bylaw 25-291, 2017. It's BC Housing. The essence of the bylaw adds a new definition of shelter residential that will define the shelter residential as a use, and then amend the C4 commercial floor zone to allow the use of shelter residential only on the subject property, the Lot C. That's addressed at 5653 Wharf Avenue, which is where the upper deck hostel is located. As well, you'll see on page 74, I'm suggesting some potential bylaw consideration dates, and it needs a endorsement for a special meeting of council following the public hearing on December 19th, 2017. So we would be looking for a motion of council to do that if council chooses to go in that direction. One of the other things I wanted to point out that all members of public hearing all the members of council need to be at the public hearing in order to vote immediately afterwards or before a report is given. So the minutes will not be prepared in time for those second and third readings the following night. So we would appreciate knowing that everyone's going to make their utmost to be there. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a number of questions around this one, but I'm going to hold them until after the public hearing. But I have one comment about the public hearing. I'm a little bit nervous about having the public hearing and then immediately going into a council meeting to approve or to have a reading of the bylaw. I guess for me, I would like to at least be able to take the information away from the public hearing and at least think about it overnight. To turn around and walk right straight from a public meeting into a council meeting where I'm going to make an approval, it doesn't seem to me that is it leaves the perception that we're not taking and giving much thought to the public hearing and that this thing is a done deal. And I guess I would like to consider all the comments at a public hearing, at least overnight before I went into a meeting and said, yes, I'm going to vote for this, or no, I'm not going to vote for it, whatever the case may be. So I would like to see that at least one day in there, if we could possibly work that.
Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. This is not a new process. It may be something that we don't do in the district, but my understanding, this is actually in legislation that this is allowed. Is that correct?
Yes, it is allowed, and many communities as well do first and second readings of the bylaw before public hearing. We're asking for consideration of second reading so that we're not considering second, third, and final reading on the following night, December 20th. Part of the reason is that the shelter has a slightly more extended lease at the current condition, but they are turning away, as we learned at the public information meeting, they're turning away 1 to 3 people a night. And as the cold weather sets in, it's important that these folks get a new place that's a little bit better and expanded in terms of the number of beds. And the next council meeting, if it's not looked at then, isn't until January 17th, according to the schedule. So in order to consider this, getting it done this month, this will be our opportunity. We do need the 1 day between second and third reading to obtain the Ministry of Transportation approval. And that's partly the reason that we have a little bit there. So you will have an overnight. You're not approving it on the night of the 19th public hearing. Thank you.
Councillor Inkster.
So thanks. This has been an issue that's been in front of us in terms of information available to us. What was presented to us the other evening in terms of the presentation at the Legion, a lot of us saw that. We've heard about it in our community. We've had written documents in front of us. So a lot of the information is available to us, and then the public hearing will be an opportunity for those to speak for or against it. That's, in a sense, that final time. So a lot of the information is there to us. I would ask, though, a couple questions of process. So what we just heard then was, if it's second that night, we'd have an opportunity third or fourth the next night. So as per Councillor Wright's concern, we could still not support it the next night if, in fact, there's a lot of concern put forward at the public hearing. That's just one question, just to confirm that. But also, too, in terms of the presence at the public hearing, in terms of us all having to be there, that's legislation, of course, but does that mean, say something happens, does that mean we can be in contact, as some council members have done, over the phone to be in support of that? Let's just put it all out there to make sure, because this is an important issue to all of council, what is available to us if something unforeseen occurs.
And to corporate officer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Per council's procedure bylaw, councillors are allowed to call in. I believe there's a maximum of only 2 councillors can call in. The majority of council has to be present. But yes, you can certainly vote electronically under the council procedure bylaw. If you think that's an issue, we'll make sure we have the telephone equipment down here. And yes,
okay.
we can.
Good, thanks.
Thank you. Anything further? I'd like to speak, but I'd like to hear from all of you. Yes.
I guess I got in the queue before Councillor Shanks. So I'm happy with what I see here. I'm going to vote in favor of this. It's important to me, at least, that we have a public hearing on this item before we make our final decision on it. It is an important piece of zoning, and I think that what's been put forward to staff is the most workable. And of course, we've heard from the community in terms of the need. We know that the need is there. This allows us to do it in a way that works with our procedures.
Thank you. Councillor Shanks.
Yes, ever cautious of Councillor Wright's position on such matters. I wonder if there's an opportunity to, in fact, have a 20th AM meeting of council in order to ratify second reading, if that would be possible, with the council meeting taking place that evening.
Thank you.
Council must pass a resolution to schedule this special meeting. It is completely within your purview as to what time, what day, all of that procedurally. The important part procedurally is that you do pass a resolution scheduling the special meeting.
Yeah, I think once again, because Councillor Wright and myself have left this meeting on several occasions simply because of a perception of conflict of interest, I think for the same reason, and not a conflict of interest, but in terms of the perception of doing council business, it may be more appropriate that in fact we have that meeting on December 20th AM.
Thank you. Now that everyone's spoken once, okay, we'll go again. Who's next? Councillor Seegers.
I guess maybe we should ask of the councillors here, first of all, before we even look at meeting the next morning, is everybody on council planning on being at the public hearing?
It's a Wednesday, yeah.
It's a Wednesday, it's a Tuesday night.
Tuesday, and then Wednesday the next morning.
Okay, so I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Mueller? Councillor Wright?
Well, I've already changed my travel plans once to accommodate this. And that's why I'm trying to get it very clear about when we're meeting, because I do not want to have to change them again. But I will be here on the 19th for the public hearing, and I will be here on the 20th for the meeting. But after that, you're pushing it real close.
Councillor Inkster.
Well, two parts to this. One is that, of course, I'll be supporting this. It's something we probably should have looked at a couple years ago in terms of dealing with this issue, but it's before us now, and as many have called it, a difficult situation, so I'm very much in favor of moving it forward to listen to the community. I did want to, Madam Chair, just speak to what happened the other night and how I think that our staff was very good at, our one staff person that was there was very good at answering the community's questions very clearly and presenting our position very clearly and legally to the community as to why we had to follow the compressed process that we did, although there was many that wanted us to move 2 weeks ago. So it's good to hear the explanation that our public hearing process will basically line up with the notification period. So we can't, in fact, move any quicker, and I think the community needs to know that, be reiterated again. But this is a really important issue for our community, for us to find a solution, so I'd like us to move forward, and I just want to, in ending, make sure with the concerns put forward by one council member and it being spoken to, that the process with the 20th morning and then evening, if that meets the process and legal criteria to move the project forward as per our original plan. Thank you. Just to make sure.
Thank you. Councillor Seegers.
Sorry, do we want to look to staff for an answer to that one?
Yeah.
Does there not need to be a full day between? Does there not need to be a full day between? Second and third and final
Microphone, please.
No, there doesn't. My thought is to double check with Ms. Letman that will give staff enough time to receive the comments back from MODI, from Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure that we will need. The whole point of doing it the night before was to give us that span of time. So I would ask Ms. Letman that. But in terms of procedurally, my understanding is that's why you'd want to do it early. You could give second reading, recess the council meeting, that gives you all day if that works, and then reconvene the council meeting that evening. So I would look to Ms. Letman in terms of time frame.
Yes, I think that's doable as long as the meeting is around 9 o'clock in the morning, then we would have the time to get that signature.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say I'm in support of this as well. I'd like to thank Tanya Hall on behalf of the community. I think this is really big of her to take this on and do this. And I'd also like to thank Ms. Letman for being at the meeting. I think she was able to address the questions the public had with regards to the zoning, the rezoning, the process, and the timeline. And I'd also like to thank there are a few people in the community. Most said they wanted us to move forward very quickly. Like, don't do all this process, just do it. And then we had a few people come forward who said, you know, we need to respect the process. The process needs to happen the way the process needs to happen. So I'd like to thank them as well.
And I will remind council that is part of the process, going in with an open mind. I have a concern because at that meeting that was so well supported by the community, there was an issue brought up that if we don't do our due diligence and go through this properly, it could quash the bylaw. So for me to move the one reading to the 20th and in that afternoon, I'm more comfortable with that than doing it right after the public hearing. I do not want to see some discomfort in the community to quash this at that critical stage. We've always, as a council, been very consistent in how we've done our procedure and our process. And I think there is the opportunity that if anything slows down our process on the 19th and 20th, that there may be a way we can approve occupancy prior to the adoption. Is there not? Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair, first of all, when the bylaw comes forward on the 20th of the evening, you will have time then, you will have the opportunity then to not proceed with adoption if for whatever reason you feel you need more information, and adoption could still occur in January. The second part of that, of your question, sorry, what was the second part?
Occupancy
Oh,
before
yes,
adoption.
occupancy. So we have had legal advice in the past, and we've had it confirmed again, that council is not legally bound to follow its bylaws, or to enforce its bylaws, I should say. So especially if there's a policy decision not to do so. So if, for example, you know, council directed that while this process is unfolding, bylaw enforcement shall not enforce the zoning bylaw for a short period of time of a couple of weeks, that is, legally, council can do that.
Thank you. I see more mics again. Councillor Shanks.
No, I think I'm next.
Oh,
Okay, I was actually going to move recommendation number 2. That's on here. And if there's a seconder.
do we have a seconder for that recommendation? You can still speak to it before we vote, Councillor Shanks. Seconder? Thank you. Councillor Shanks.
Yeah, I just think the very fact that I can probably only remember on 2 occasions where we had a public hearing and then gave a second reading right afterwards goes back a lot of years. And I think the reality is if we take that extra evening and do the second reading on the 20th, it'll demonstrate that we are in compliance. We're not making any exceptions for this particular application, but we're still moving it forward in a very quick manner by comparison to other things that have happened. So I'm not sure if there's support for having that meeting, second hearing postponed to the 20th, but
We'll come back to that.
we'll come back to that.
With the
Good. Thank you.
resolution. Yes.
Yeah, I just
Councillor
I just
Mueller.
wanted to on the issue. I was checking the calendars, and I've also sent out a text to our mayor to make sure that we'll be able to be there. Staff did do the due diligence to make sure that we would all be there, so that this would work. And I guess by the end of this meeting, hopefully we'll receive something back to confirm that. And if something changes, then maybe we can readdress another resolution before this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. So we have before us recommendation number 2 around zoning bylaw 25, 291, amendment bylaw for BC housing, and that's recommendation 2 on page 72. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So now, do we want to deal with the date, or can we leave that and bring it up later in the meeting after we're no longer in this section? Yeah, I know.
Council has to pass a resolution to have the special meeting. You don't have to do it now. As chair, you could say, you'll bring this back later in the meeting, if that's what you're asking. We'll just make a
I
note.
think that would be best as we're waiting for confirmation from the mayor.
Yes.
So now we will move to 81.8.1B, and that is the actual bylaw, number 25-291, 2017, BC Housing. And whereas, do I need to read the whole bylaw? You don't have to. Okay. You all have it before you, and it is on the screen. So could I have a motion for first reading? Moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor? And we only do first reading. Thank you. So I'm going to hang on to that. We'll move to item 8.2A, and this is report from Angela Letman, Municipal Planner, around an amended third reading of bylaw number 25274, 2016, RTC Properties Limited. Could I have a motion to receive? Moved, seconded. All those in favor of receipt? All those in favor of receipt? He said yes. Just for receipt, page 93. Now we'll go to our municipal planner to give us the lowdown.
Yes, members of council, we have before you a proposal that it be the bylaw be amended a second or third or fourth time. We're looking at the last meeting of council. Council had removed a section which remains removed and is highlighted, you'll see in the bylaw itself. And the other one was to, the actual amendment we're proposing is that the wording of 3.1 say the maximum lot coverage is 40% and inclusive of all parking areas, notwithstanding the definition of lot coverage of Part 1, Interpretation Section 102, Definitions of Zoning Bylaw Number 25, 1987. So this clause actually makes the referral to the parking areas and also to the specific section where lot coverage is defined within the zoning bylaw. So that's our proposal.
Thank you. So do I have a motion to move recommendation 2 and/or 3? Move recommendation number 2. Seconder? All those in, comments, questions? Yes, Councillor Mueller.
This particular one, the maximum lot coverage being 40%, but we're changing our interpretation of what the lot coverage means on this particular one. I don't think it's fair to this particular developer to do this. This is the first time we've done anything like this, where we've changed the definition, and I understand the intent behind it, but I just want to remind council that there is a development permit coming, and often those types of things would be handled at the development permit stage.
Anything? Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. This was covered off actually in the bylaw in front of us. And at the public hearing, the developer indicated that this was the intent, that 40% included parking areas. And that's why I made this recommendation to modify it at the last meeting.
Anything further? Yes.
I guess I'll add one more, is that we have had in the past certain types of applications come through that wanted to change some of the really base foundations of the way we deal with developments. One of them was the way that we had one of these, they asked us to change the definition of how we deal with FSR for one particular application, and I wasn't in favor of that. And I'm not in favor of this because it just goes to the very root of how we deal with applications, and I don't think it, to me, is fair.
Okay, nothing further on the discussion. All those in favor of recommendation number 2? Opposed? Thank you. Pardon? It's carried. Recommendation number 3, that zoning bylaw number 25 be given third reading as amended. Is there a mover for this motion? And a seconder. Thank you. Any discussion? Yes.
This amendment actually made a change to the number of units on this property. So our municipal documents, our OCP, our vision document, our sustainability plan, not only support higher density in the downtown area, but state there's a need for it. So based on those documents, which we request our developers and our staff to adhere to, staff negotiated with the developer for this development to have 31 units built on the property under discussion. The number of units was determined using established formulas that are used on all developments, and that's to Councillor Wright's comment. He didn't know how many units should be allowed. Staff used formulas to determine the number. Then based on the additional density, they negotiated amenities for the municipality. After last meeting, where Councillor Mueller put forward a motion to reduce the number of units on the development to 20 units, the base amount, and not receive any of the negotiated amenities, I was asked out in the community what the rationale for his motion was, and I couldn't give an answer. I didn't know what the answer was. So given Councillor Mueller's motion, which was then supported by Mayor Milne, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, Councillor Lutz and Shanks, was carried by the majority in attendance, I'd like to ask Councillor Mueller what his rationale was for not following staff's recommendation and our guiding documents in support of the 31 units on the site. And I did tell him I'd be asking him this tonight. And particularly not supporting the 31 units on this site since we did not reduce the size and the massing of the buildings.
I believe Councillor Wright is first up, and then we'll go to Councillor Mueller first. No, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm more than happy to respond, and I would like to thank Councillor Seegers for giving me a heads up about this question so I could prepare a response. In doing so, I went back and I reviewed the recording of the previous meeting to see if anything was unclear in my statements. There was nothing that was unclear from my reading of it. If you do receive those questions out in the community, that's a good place to refer people. And I'll just repeat what was said there. To me, this was a very difficult application. We had very strong localized opposition to this particular development, and specifically on the issue of density. There were other issues as well, but density was the one. And it is, I would say, of all the developments we've dealt with, we received the most opposition and the most ferocious opposition to this one. And so seeing that and realizing that the public hearings of what had been heard, I wanted to respond to that. I also wanted to be fair to the developer and also support our OCP. In our OCP, it's very clear that we can offer density bonuses for community amenities, but there's, in this particular case, a base density that should carry the day, in my view. And hearing from our community the way that we did, that they did not want to see increased density, the only compromise I felt was fair was to go with the base density and not pursue the community amenities. That view was then supported by council, and that's where we are at third reading. Thanks.
Thank you. And now we have before us recommendation number 3. Oh, comments. Who's first? Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to be, and in consideration of what was discussed at that meeting, not being there to second guess what happened at that meeting. So I try to find line, but in terms of the issue being raised and the discussion of which has been referred to, and a number of us have spoken to it over time, the OCP, Sustainability Division Plan. The difficulty I have with reducing the numbers of units and keeping the site coverage similar and the height the same is that what you'll have is larger units and not necessarily many less people there in terms of densification. So lowering it to 20 units doesn't make sense to me. If in fact there's people that are against the development totally, then they don't want to see anything there. If they are okay with some compromise, I think that there's been a fair amount of compromise with this council to reduce the numbers of units, keep the same size, the same height, the potentiality of larger units rather than smaller, without the amenities doesn't make sustainable, smart growth sense to me. So I don't know what to do, because what I'm hearing is council's supporting the development, but I don't think this is a smart growth way to support the development, because they could just build larger units with slightly maybe less people, so there's not a density change there, without the benefit of the community amenities. So that's where I am, so I have some issues going forward.
Thank you. Before we go too much further, I want to remind council that we're looking at recommendation number 3. And if you have more to say to that recommendation, please do so.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Mueller, we did have localized opposition. We also had the rest of the community stand up and say, we want the density. So we can always bow to the local people on any kind of application that comes forward. But our job is to represent the whole community. And that's what our OCP, our vision document, and our sustainability plan do. And that's why I would be in support of more density on that site. Staff did acknowledge the opposition in the community and reduced it from 48 units down to 31. That was in acknowledgement of what their concerns were. I think they did a good job, and the developer met them halfway. I think we'd come up with a proposal that everyone could live with. I'm not in favor of the reduction to 20 and the loss of the amenities that we would get with that. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I fully understood that the base density of this particular piece of property was 20 units. I don't think 20 units is the right number, nor do I think 31 is the right number. And I believe that if we'd have come somewhere in the middle, we could have made the community happy and we could have got the amenities that we needed. At some point in time, we are very likely going to be asked to provide some of those amenities. And I know where I'm going to have to go to get that money. And if you'll recall, I put a motion on the floor that particular evening to defer this item, defer it back to the administration, so that the administration, who has done all of the talking with the developer, could go back and renegotiate it. Instead, we chose to play planner at this table, and this is where we are now. I'm not going to vote in favor of this, and it's got to do with the 20 units. And I'm hoping that I'm not holding the developer up from moving forward, because I believe we made a mistake when we said 20 units, and we agreed to that. That is a decision of council. I will support the council decision, whether I voted for it or whether I didn't. But that will not stop me from voicing my opinion. We should not have done that. We should have deferred it back to the administration. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Councillor Mueller.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the full discussion. That was something that I said at second reading, that we really hash this out again at third reading, and we're doing that. So I thank council for that. A little bit more as to why I think this is the right compromise. We had a situation here where this has already been sent back. It has already been reworked. Where this would leave this development application, we would send it back again without any clear direction. I don't know, but I don't think that leaves a lot of certainty moving forward for this project. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to achieve at second reading, was some certainty around the density. That was, to me, the key issue. I understand the issue about the community amenities, and I didn't take that lightly, that we would be losing, I think, the key carrot there, which was $400,000 for affordable housing. Okay, that is a lot, and the community needs to understand that when we give density bonuses, that there are actual real things for the community that we would get in return for that. In the public hearings, I did not see that NIMBYism carried the day. That's not what I saw. I saw there were real issues about the specific character of that area, and they put forward arguments that swayed me in terms of the way they feel about their neighborhood and the special character of it, and that the proposal at 31 units was not in keeping with that. So that's what was at the heart of my compromise, and I stand by it. I think it was a good compromise, so council will vote as it does.
Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. One of the difficult parts of that whole amendment to me is that we reduced the number of units, but we did not reduce the size or the massing on the property. So if the buildings are the same size, what difference does it make if there are 20 units or 31? We got the same size buildings. It's the size of the buildings and the massing that the community had an issue with. So I would rather see the 31 units and the amenities that we as a municipality would receive from the 31 units, given that we've got the same size buildings.
Councillor Inkster.
So I do wonder, where this can go, if in fact it goes sideways, because I think it's going to, Madam Chair, just to give you a prediction based on what's been said, because a tie will not move it forward. But what I would add to the discussion is if in fact we go with less units and the same size, the same massing, same site coverage, and also the same height. That's another issue I have, because what we were hearing and what I was hearing from some people was they were concerned about the potential height of the buildings. So we could go with more units and even reduce the height, because the original plan had a higher height, but what was it, 48 units? So that's what maybe the height was to take into account, but we could actually probably reduce the height and give more units under a change of plan. So that's where I get really, confused on this, is I just don't think it's meeting some smart growth plans. Thanks.
Councillor Mueller.
Yeah, I just wanted to, one time, and then I'll end my comments, address the issue of lot coverage and FSR. We were dealing with the density related to the zoning, and that is based on occupancy. I was not in favor of the previous motion that addressed the lot coverage and dealt with this lot coverage in a different way, because these are the very foundational pieces that all developments go through. And to go ahead and limit that for this particular one is, to me, palpably unfair. We deal with the zoning. I don't think we should be changing the other key things that all developers deal with. Lot coverage, finished floor ratio. And so those are the kinds of things that I don't think is fair for council to deal with here.
Thank you. Seeing no more lights, I will call the question on recommendation. Oh, sorry. Councillor Wright.
That's quite all right, Madam Chair. I'm sorry. At the risk of getting a reputation for deferral, rather than see this go sideways, which I think it just might do with a 6-member council, would it be possible, would you entertain a motion to defer it to another meeting so that we have at least 7 people at the meeting so that it can move forward or not move forward?
No debate, correct?
No, it hasn't been seconded yet, so.
Okay, is there a seconder for the motion?
Hold on, would you entertain that motion, or do you want to see it seconded?
I'll entertain any motion.
Okay.
We need a seconder. Seeing none. Yes. A seconder? Motion's been seconded for deferral, no debate. All those in favor? We're deferring recommendation number 3, zoning bylaw 25. Correct? Correct. Thank you. All those in favor of deferral? It's opposed? It's carried. So it will be deferred to the next council meeting, correct? So that eliminates 8.2B for tonight. Well, that was fun. So now 8.3, biosolids disposal fee. Could I have a motion to receive the report? Yep. All those in favor of receipt? Thank you. Recommendation number 2 has been moved. Is there a seconder? Yes. Any discussion? All those in favor of recommendation 2? Opposed? Carried. So now we go to the bylaw. We have to rescind 3rd reading of bylaw number 483-1, 2017. It's on the screen for everyone to see. A mover and a seconder? To rescind. Thank you. Now, all those in favor of rescinding? Carried. Now, we have a motion to move third reading by Miss Councillor Seegers, this lady over here, and seconder. All those in favor of third reading? Thank you. So new business. We actually do have a new business item, and that is to extend the term for the Sunshine Coast Regional District second director, which is Councillor Inkster. Do I have a motion to that effect?
To defer, to extend how long?
2 months is what would help give us a chance to have the conversation.
Beginning of February?
Yes, February 28th this year.
So that'd be 3 months. Because it's December 1st.
You're right, February 1st. Seconder, we have discussion. Thank you. Councillor Shanks.
Yeah, I'd hope for this wouldn't come back for review at the 11th hour because we would be in the middle of budget discussion. So I hope it's dealt with in the next council meeting.
Certainly. So we have a motion to, no, we can't though, can we? Because there's an SCRD meeting before then.
Tonight, if what I heard, Madam Chair, was that moved and seconded that Councillor Inkster be appointed as the second SCRD board director to February 1st, 2018. So that will be effective as of tonight after the resolution is passed. And then a new appointment will have to be made prior to February 1st, 2018.
Which it can be a reappointment if we so choose. Yep. Yep. So you understand the motion?
No, I do.
Okay, and the reason? Yeah. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. So now, business item 10.1, we have 2 notices of motion that were submitted by Councillor Seegers. Can I have a motion to receive the notice of motion? Moved and seconded. So now we have before us, thank you. Would you like to present your motions, Councillor Seegers? That would be helpful.
Thank you. I think the discussion on page 109 speaks for itself. At the council meetings, we many times just adopt or endorse the recommendations that come through the committees. And a lot of the conversation takes place at the committees. I would like to see, and I think the community would like to see, that those committee meetings be videotaped and put up on our YouTube channel as well. And as I indicated in here, the financial implications, both the CAO and the IT manager have indicated that the required infrastructure is already in place. It would require additional staff time, and the reason I brought this forward now was so that it could be implemented beginning of January, and if there were any budget implications, they could be taken into account during our budget process. So the first motion is, be it resolved that Sechelt Council direct staff to videotape committee meetings as they do for regular council meetings and post them on the District of Sechelt YouTube channel as of the beginning of January 2018. And I'd look for a seconder.
Seconder, thank you. Comments?
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. I am in favor of the spirit of this motion. This council has set one of our guiding principles is to run a transparent government with the principles of good governance, and this improves, I think, the transparency, and it definitely fills a gap in there that previously had not been considered. The one comment I would make about it is that we have for some time planned on bringing our procedure bylaw back in its entirety to deal with, and I wonder if that might not be a better place to do this. I'm totally in favor of the spirit of it, and I think that in our process, perhaps bringing the entire bylaw back to see if there are additional changes that might need to be made could be helpful.
Yes, Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. I'm not aware of even council meeting videotaping is in our council procedure bylaw. I think that was just a process that we implemented. I don't think it's even part of that bylaw at this point.
Corporate office, or?
It's not in the procedure bylaw now. It would be an appropriate thing to consider to put in the procedure bylaw, but it's not in the bylaw now.
Councillor Inkster.
Thank you. I guess we could probably just bring those things back as a document from, as has happened before, to just make those changes to reflect these two changes anyway in the procedure bylaw, if in fact they're supported. But in terms of this issue that's before us right now, I know there's two motions that we've read, and the second one will be presented. Second one, I would prefer that the chair, the mayor, be back for that discussion. So that's where I'll be on that one. But on this one, I have no problem with this. As a chair of a committee, and I'd like to see some of the discussions that we have at Public Works and Parks on YouTube for the community to see. Sometimes you'll get eight or 10 people, but a lot of times you get 4 or 5. So this will maybe, because it's recorded and will be on YouTube, give more people an opportunity to see what actually happens at committee, because there is a lot of substantive discussion at committee on a number of issues that are missed by the public if they don't make it. So, yeah, I think it's an okay idea.
Any other comments? I'm going to speak to it. I like the idea of it coming back with the council procedure bylaw, this and possibly the second motion. I think that it would be good to have the changes all made together. So I'm going to vote against it tonight, even though I'm in favor of the idea of it. Yes, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to defer this one. I'm going to support this motion because I think it's something that we should do. And our committee meetings are held in the middle of the day. One of them starts at 1, the other one starts at 2, I believe. And so it's very difficult for people, if they have a full-time job, to attend those committee meetings. And so to have it on YouTube so that they can view it at their leisure makes sense. And so I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Inkster.
I'm still supporting it, but I think I know why Councillor Wright is supporting it, because he got to sit in the very middle of the camera last time.
Okay. If there's... Yes, Councillor Wright.
Well, Madam Chair, I couldn't let that one pass.
I didn't think so.
And that's because I wear a tie.
Okay, we have before us a motion that has been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Carried. Second notice of motion.
Thank you. This one I think will take a little more discussion. The motion is, be it resolved that Sechelt Council directs staff to videotape the public question and answer period following council and committee meetings instead of stopping the recording at the adjournment of the meeting, as is current practice, and post them on the District of Sechelt YouTube channel as of the beginning of January 2018. Again, the question and answer period is a public opportunity to question council on matters on the agenda and of current concern. So for members of the public in attendance, they have a way to ask their questions, get answers, but for those who aren't in attendance, they have no way of knowing what is even being asked of council and or what the responses to some of those questions asked are. So in keeping with the council strategic plan to be fully transparent, if the public question and answer period is posted, then all will be fully transparent to the community. Again, infrastructure is in place and there is no financial implication. Thank you.
So you've moved your motion? And is there a seconder? Yes. And discussion. Councillor Mueller.
Yes, thank you. This one, as Councillor Seegers mentioned, is a little bit more complicated. The first one has to do with us and our business alone, and the second one potentially has an impact on the public. I would like to give this more consideration, and this is one that I will not be supporting. And that is only because when public comes forward, they know they're being recorded. That puts them under a different level of scrutiny than has otherwise been practice. I think that after this motion, we deal with it. I'll be making an additional motion to direct staff to bring back the procedures bylaw in its entirety so we can have the whole discussion about other things we may want to deal with. And we can deal with that one then. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. As some of you may know, this has been a conversation out in the community, which is why I brought it forward. I did speak with the corporate officer about it because some of the concerns I had were that, as Councillor Mueller indicated, some of the people may not be comfortable speaking up in maybe coming forward to the mic or whatever. So I was concerned about how would the questions actually be picked up on our videotape. And so we did talk about some of those processes. The chair could actually repeat the question that the person brought forward. The other part that I had a concern about was the legality of some of the information that is then put forth by whoever answers the questions. And again, the corporate officer advised me that, as we adjourn the meeting, it is very clear that we are no longer in a legal meeting and that the comments are made just as comments at that point. So I was okay with bringing this forward as, presented.
Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, as I indicated earlier, I'd like all of council to be discussing this, so I won't be supporting it as it stands. And I do want more time to consider it because I'm trying to consider the discussion and or the point around the business of council. What we're trying to film. Are we trying to film the business of council or other things? So that's why I won't be supporting it and or I'd like full council to discuss it. And maybe that will happen as part of that particular piece of the procedure bylaw.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Wright.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. This one, I would like to see further discussion, again, by all of council. And I think this one, the proper way to bring this one back is with the procedure, the bylaw. And I understand the essence of it and tend to agree with it, but I would like to have that fuller discussion with everybody here. So at this point in time, I think I'm going to vote against this one.
Any further discussion? I too am going to vote against it. I think it belongs in our procedural policy. I have some concerns that there could be some lengthy meetings. I think our press do a very good job of bringing up those kinds of things that come at the end of a meeting during question period. And until we go through the policy, I think that right now is not the time to pass this motion. So we have the motion in front of us, moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Thank you. Yes, we have another motion.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like at this time to make a motion to direct staff to bring back a report on the council procedure bylaw for a fulsome discussion at the best available venue.
A seconder? Yes. Discussion.
So, I alluded to this earlier in terms of why I wouldn't support the previous one, so it makes sense then to support this, but within the motion, what I didn't hear clearly was bring back the entire procedure bylaw document for discussion, bring back sections of the procedure bylaw as it pertains to council meetings and recordings. Procedure bylaw is quite lengthy, and it may need to go to committee, or the length of the meeting that Chairperson Lutz was referring to may be as long as the one that she was worried about.
Yes, corporate officer.
Madam Chair, I might be able to provide a little bit of clarity there. It has been on my 27 work plan to bring a revised council procedure bylaw forward. This goes back to a committee of the whole meeting that was held in April 2016, where council did a very thorough review of its procedure bylaw and provided a lot of direction. I have incorporated all of that into the bylaw. The plan had actually been to bring it forward to today's committee of the whole, but the community forest was a more pressing matter, and so that came forward. So as of now, I have a report basically ready to bring forward to the next scheduled committee of the whole meeting, because many of the amendments from the last Cal meeting require some further fleshing out by council. So my suggestion would be, if we add, if you want to pass a resolution saying that consideration of Councillor Seeger's second notice resolution be included, then we could bring it forward, added at that time with all the rest of the proposed amendments that will be at February 2018 Cal.
Thank you. So we're looking for a friendly amendment.
Yeah, and I would consider those to be friendly amendments. This is in keeping with what I had in mind, and I assume that committee of the whole would be the best venue, but was prepared to leave that to staff.
Yes, it was seconded. Thank
so
you.
I think then for a verbal clarity as to what's in there, that council directs staff to bring forward the procedures bylaw as well as
Notice of motion.
the notice of motion item to and the procedures bylaw in its entirety and the notice of motion item to a committee of the whole meeting of staff's choosing.
Thank you. And that's been seconded. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Well done. Next. Item 10.2, covenant modification request, and move receipt, seconded. All those in favor of receipt? Carried. We have recommendation number 2. Is anyone willing to move that, or would you like our community planner to speak to it? Moved, seconded, and please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So it is just a very brief report as a follow-up to the previous council motion, which directed staff to work with the applicant to devise a amendment to this covenant. And through working with them, we have proposed a proposed amendment as attached to the report that looks both the 3.0 meters above grade as requested by council, but also sets an absolute maximum height of 65.67 meters geodetic survey above, so essentially 65.67 meters above sea level. So it sets both the maximum and the in terms of absolute height as well as the measure above grade. So it meets both the applicant's desire and council's desire. So it's essentially good.
Thank you. Any comments or questions around this report and recommendation? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 10.3, Chapman Creek Development Permit. The receipt's been moved, seconded. Comments from Ms. Letman? Oh, vote on receipt, please. All in favor. Thank you. And recommendation 2 is in front of us.
Madam Chair, members of the council, what I did here is do a summary report. I know that the motion of the Planning and Community Development Committee was endorsed, but here what we have done is prepared the draft development permit in its entirety so that council can have it in front of them to review. So thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions around the report? And could I have a motion? Recommendation number 2 moved and seconded. Questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On item 2C, you have Highway 101 by the BC Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, and then you have an and. Is there something else that's missing on the end of that, or is the and just the last word on 2C? That should be deleted, or is there an and on there?
That's correct. The and should come off and there should be a period there.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 10.4, BC Rural Dividend Application. We have a report in front of us. Could I have receipt moved? Thank you. Moved and carried. All those in favor? Receipt. And we have a recommendation 2. Moved and seconded. And comments, would that be from you, sir?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, yeah, no, the November 8th Finance, Corporate, Culture and Economic Development Committee, the committee passed a recommendation that staff investigate, review, and report back to the FCD committee regarding the scope of work, cost recovery, and revenue potential regarding the Porpoise Bay Wharf, land, and harbor. This was subsequently endorsed tonight by council. So in anticipation of that, we looked into some funding opportunities, and the BC Rural Dividend Program does have a grant that supports this type of investigation. So, and the cutoff date is December 15th. So we're simply seeking council's endorsement to apply for a BC Rural Dividend Program grant for $10,000 to allow us to bring in someone to help study what potential could be done at the wharf.
Thank you. Good find. Councillor Seegers. Oh, Councillor Inkster.
So it'd be good to hear some discussion on this because it's good to, and I always support this, and I wish we'd do more of it, and I wish we'd look forward to putting some things in our community by applying for outside money. So if we like stuff like this, I would encourage council to encourage staff and/or support more outside applications for looking for money to help our community. Then we don't have to go to the taxpayer. That having been said, this particular one, I'm asking committee, the council sitting here tonight, if in fact we don't get the money, are we still going forward with an analysis of the docks? We have some reports upstairs that were done a number of years ago. And if in council would be more comfortable with an updated plan paid for by somebody else and it delays our work and our plans by a few months, I'm okay with that. Things take time. But I'm just saying we have reports that traced a number of years ago, and the chairperson's aware of this report that put together a plan as to what we could do at Porpoise Bay Dock. And they're up there and they could just be asked for. But if we want to go this route, I'll still support it. I hope it comes up with something different or additional or groundbreaking or more thoughtful than the information we have upstairs. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Inkster. And now, Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. I think there are a number of other ideas that have come forward since those plans have been done. Those plans could potentially be a starting place, and we could incorporate other ideas. My question for staff would be, given that we're looking at economic development potentials for the district, how would we see the Sunshine Coast Regional Economic Development Organization involved with this? You know, we have tasked them with doing these types of things in the community and for the area. If we apply for the grant, could we also work with them in maybe leveraging the funds to go a little further? Is that something that's been considered?
Madam Chair, that certainly would be an option. We could certainly put that out to Sunshine Coast Economic Development Organization. But of course, we do have an arm's length relationship with them, so whether they accepted that recommendation would certainly be up to them, but they wanted to do that. On this further, we had looked at getting the iced tea grant as far as being able to develop the wharf area, and actually the response from them was, as long as it's in our work plan or we have some plans, we could possibly get some capital funding from them, but this will be the first step. They weren't prepared to fund this stage of the investigation, but the next stage. So it's certainly probably something the district could take on its own.
Thank you. And I would think myself that the regional economic development could step in at the next level once we had some plans out of this report. So we have before us, Councillor Mueller.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try not to echo the comments of other councillors, but the reason why this came forward in the first place is just really stressing the value that is in our docks. The only thing for me that's missing here is a addition of the Trail Bay dock, because I think that's another one that needs looking at from the point of view of a business plan. These are phenomenal community assets, and at this point they may be underutilized. We don't know, but we'd like to know. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything further? So recommendation number 2, all those in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. Thank you. 10.5, page 180. Council policy on outside referrals. Receive the report, please. Moved and seconded. Do we have comments on this from corporate? Or? No, we're fine. Okay.
Basically, this came from a planning recommendation.
Yes. Did you get that? This came?
I'm sorry. This was, there was a recommendation in a previous planning committee meeting that staff prepare this proposed policy, so it's in front of you to either endorse or make amendments to before endorsing.
Thank you. Any comments around the policy? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. And now we get to councillors' reports, and I'll start with Councillor Mueller, please.
Thank you, Councillor, Madam Chair, Councillor Lutz, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, no, it's felt like a busy couple of weeks, and that's just because of the weight of some of the things that we've been dealing with, things that have been taking up my time, RTC, the community forest, the water issue. These are all really big things for our community. So like I said, other than the special meeting that we had on that particular issue, these were all just regular meetings. We haven't really delved into the budget yet, but that's something that's coming. So I would have hoped to have spent more money on the budget, but it's been dealing with these other pressing issues, and I think we're moving towards a resolution on some of these key things, which I'm happy to see. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Shanks.
Yes, just a couple of items, Your Worship. I was pleased to hear and attend the Water Master Plan presentation, as well as the discussions that we had here at our strategic or our special planning meeting, where we had SCRD staff here. We were able to ask many questions, and the public was able to ask many questions as well. Independent of this, and in conjunction with other duties I call a traffic or a meeting concerned with traffic for the car show that the Coasters Car Club puts on an annual basis. It's a source of great distress and inconvenience when we do have that car show on, but the issue is one of traffic control at Toreto and Trail Avenue. So I did have a meeting with some of the major players with respect to that, and I do now have to have a meeting with the farmers market to see if we can come to some arrangement there so that there's better access in and around Sechelt on that one specific day. So that's one thing outside council business that I've been dealing with. Interesting to see the intergovernment meeting that we had at the SIB Hall on November the 27th. I believe I like the new format where there are different presentations over different issues by different people. And at the same time, there was some discussion if the members in attendance wanted that discussion. But it was an enjoyable format for me, where some of us didn't even know what the agenda was in terms of the presentations. But it was good to see either 4 or 5 presentations that we received from different perspectives on those very different issues in front of our entire community of the Sunshine Coast. So I would encourage that sort of intergovernment meeting to take place in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Inkster, if you would give your council report, I'll come back to you at the end for RD.
Thank you. So just, I was waiting for Councillor Shanks to reference something that came up in the last couple of days because of his work with the Ferry Advisory Committee, and he didn't. So I'll just say that I know that there was a document presented to the regional district on the ferry issues a couple of months ago, and I made sure Councillor Shanks received that document. But what I did bring forward to council was that the big issue of hourly ferries, if you remember, I said that the problem with that going forward in that direction was Horseshoe Bay, that they had to do work at Horseshoe Bay. So now in the last 24 hours, we've heard that they're going to commit $250 million to some work at Horseshoe Bay. And in that article, the CEO of the ferry said that that would help them service the Sunshine Coast. So if you can read into that, that may mean that once that work is done, that we can look forward to perhaps hourly ferries. Because that's what was said a couple of months ago in terms of work. If they got work done at Horseshoe Bay, they could look at relieving the congestion and loading and unloading ferries at Horseshoe Bay quicker, which may lead to hourly ferries. So I think that's what we should take away from the money being spent at Horseshoe Bay, is that may be where they're going, and that's what people have been asking for. So sort of crystal balling that. The intergovernmental meeting was interesting in terms of all the stuff that was presented, but it was also a good opportunity, I think, for a couple of us to make some contact with the Sechelt First Nation in order to potentially work together on the derelict vessel issue. I think that I'm not sure if the chairperson has heard from the council member, but I've certainly reached out and said we need to work together to clean up Porpoise Bay and pressure the federal government to help us do that with funding, because we can't. The Sechelts look at that issue as the same as we do, that how expensive it would be to deal with those boats ourselves, those ones that, as Councillor Lutz would say, are uninhabited. So those are the boats that we need to look at dealing with if they're polluting our bay. So I think we can work together on that one. I saw that a really important piece that came out of that. Last weekend, there was the Parade of Lights, and I don't know how many council members were there, but I remember it starting in, finished my term in 2011, just started then, and that was the first year, and there was 4 or 5 trucks. Now I would say there's 16 or 17 or 18. It's quite a lengthy. It's time-wise, it's almost as long as Canada Day, just because the vehicles are bigger. But I would hope, and I would encourage the chair to consider this, maybe writing a letter of recognition and/or thanks to Christy Swanson for organizing that, because these are people that take it take it out of their day and time to put a lot of work into making sure that event. There's lots of people downtown that night, and they stayed downtown for a number of hours, and their businesses were open too. And that's what we've been looking for, is some of the businesses to stay open at night and be part of those things. So I hope we can write a letter recognizing that, and maybe Councillor Shanks will jokingly in the next year tease them about having a fee for the floats, because I think that's his concern. We already do fund the SDBA quite a bit through properties, so maybe they don't need a fee, and maybe they'll get more vehicles. I just wanted to mention too, Remembrance Day, because just how well that was attended by the community again, and I wasn't here last meeting, so I just wanted to talk about that really quickly, how well it is every year to see the fire department there with the big flag. That's quite an emotional day. And also to just to reference quickly as my end of my council reports, the meeting the other day to see, although we haven't gone to public hearing on it yet, but to see the community come out, quite a number of them, to the Legion the other day and speak, basically want to have a discussion with our staff and BC Housing on the upper deck proposal. And just to remind council that when I came back from UBCM and I spoke to council and said that I spent a lot of time at the BC Housing booth at UBCM. I was there for about 2 hours. It was basically talking to them about their original proposal and how it would be sort of a very difficult proposal for us to try to move forward in Sechelt. And then I told them then, end of September, they needed to look at alternatives immediately so that we could move quicker on a proposal in October to house our homeless. So they did it a little later after they saw what was happening in the community, but they're doing it. So that's good to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, in addition to the regular council meetings and the various committee meetings that have been mentioned, I just will give you the highlights. I attended the raising of the Métis flag for that group of people, and it was a very emotional day for them. I quite enjoyed that. And out of that flag raising, I got an invitation to go the following Saturday where they were doing Métis jig lessons. So for those of you who know me, I couldn't resist the opportunity, so I learned 2 new dances. Having said that, I attended the SCRD Corporate and Admin Services Committee meeting, and also about a day and a half of the SCRD budget meetings. And then on Saturday, I had kind of a fun day on Saturday. Attended Habitat for Humanity. They had a Christmas party, and originally I declined and said I couldn't attend because I had several other functions that day, and the rationale I used was that I had to be wearing a tuxedo for the second function. So I said I didn't really want to come dressed up to their function in tuxedo, and they said, "Oh, come." So anyway, I ended up at Habitat for Humanity. It was a fun time. Lots of kids there, all kinds of food and all those good things. And then I got the pleasure of going to the Ortana dinner for the Cadet Corps. It's a black tie affair, and it was a really interesting evening to talk to some of the young cadets, okay? I guess the most difficult thing I had to get used to was you would ask them who they were. I'm Master Sergeant Fournier. And everybody's, sir. I've got to tell you, I haven't been called sir so many times. Anyway, it was a delightful evening. Our MLA was there, and so had a chance to spend some time with him, and convinced him that after the Ortana dinner that he should go dancing with us, my wife and I. And so we went to the Seniors Activity Center dancing, and I'll leave the rest of it out because it's just regular committee meetings. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. When I sat down to put down this list, I realized why I was kind of tired of the last couple of weeks. On the 16th, as Councillor Shanks indicated, there was the update of the Parks Master Plan. The 17th was Connie's retirement party. The 20th, I want to mention this. There's a group that we've started in the Sunshine Coast here called 100 Women Who Care. We're looking to get 100 women together. We get together 4 times a year. We each donate $100 each time. We're looking at $10,000 at a time to go to a charity. We're now at 35. So on November 20th, we gave $3,500 to the Pender Harbor Food Bank. We pick the charities out of a hat. We invite them to come and do a 5-minute presentation. The whole meeting is an hour long. And just put the word out there. The next one's February 19th. Everyone's welcome to come. Women only. It's only hour long. Hour long, we give away $3,500. No, women only. Men can set up their own, and there is another one for men. What else? Comprehensive Regional Water Master Plan. I went to the Chamber meetup. It was over at the hangar, which is over in on the Porpoise Bay area. I didn't get up and climb because I was actually coming to the special planning meeting that night, but I'm going to go back and do that. I went to the Connecting Women project finale. This came out of the project plan, or the progress plan. It was the next piece of funding that they got from Status of Women. And one of the things that each of these projects has to do is have ongoing, continual projects that are self-funded or self-perpetuating as results of them. So a couple of things that they've done is, one is gender-based training, that they've trained facilitators in the community to go out and look at inclusion. And I've actually provided one of the brochures to our CAO so we could look at that in the district here. School District 46 has taken on some of this, and they've looked at other, well, how do they put it? Not gender-related training. So in other words, they brought in a woman machine operator from the Powell River, or from the mill, brought her into the school so that they have other role models for different genders. So breaking down the gender barriers. So those are just 2 of the things, and they had a whole list of them. The intergovernmental meeting I went to the SCRD Affordable Housing and Short-Term Rental session. I dropped in on the Lions Society open house over here, where they're looking at their new Green Court project. Then I had the opportunity to be one of the judges for Christmas decorations for the Downtown Business Association on their buildings. The LEAP launch party on the 30th. And I don't think I've missed one of these. It's amazing. Some of the entrepreneurial projects that are coming forward in our community. This is one of the places where they actually are shown. I attended with Councillor Wright the Habitat Volunteer Supporter party, the Light the Lights, and the Festival of the Lights parade. I want to commend our staff. They took our new grader and put lights all over it and drove it through the parade. And then with a number of the councillors here, the public info session for the rezoning of the upper deck. And then I wanted to mention something else. Last meeting, Councillor Mueller indicated that he's gone back to school. So in my spare time, I've also gone back to school. I'm doing an executive certificate in local government through Dalhousie University. So there are times when I did a midterm earlier this week, actually, and it was like up till 3 o'clock in the morning. Because of meeting times here, I can't always do my assignments when they would allow me to do them, because I have to go to meetings here. And our mayor right now is down at LGLA, and Dr. Gordon McIntosh, who will be speaking with him down there, is actually my instructor in that course. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Busy times. I also attended the intergovernmental meeting and found it interesting. As always, it's good to be able to connect and have some discussion with other levels of government on the coast, including the school district, not just municipal and regional. I've been attending the regional district meetings, mostly as an observer. Also, the regional hospital presentation that was done last week. I got to be one of the judges for the Christmas truck light parade. That was great fun. It's a lot of work trying to score everybody and be fair, but I kept telling them I would take bribes, but nobody came up with anything. I attended today, this afternoon, just at lunch, a very quick and concise film presentation that the union employees at the SCRD presented around the Montreal massacre. And it was a very timely reminder. Also want to say that this weekend on Sunday, I believe it starts at 10 o'clock and goes till about 12:30. There's the breakfast with Santa that Labor Council and the Kinsmen put on together. Everything is free, the breakfast, the sit on Santa's knee, and the kids all receive a photograph with Santa and a bag of goodies. And it's quite amazing, the number of people and the ages. And we're now getting 2 and 3 generations of family groups that come for that traditional breakfast. So I hope some of you can make it. And I just have to say to Councillor Wright that when I attended some presentations with cadets, they called me ma'am. Not sir. So, Councillor Inkster, if you'd like to give your SCRD report.
Thanks for reminding me about the Santa Christmas event. The kids love it. Although I wish they'd let me sit on Santa's knee. But in terms of the regional district, I wanted to mention the Recycle BC conference that I was at a couple of weeks ago that kept me away from the meeting that included the RTC discussions. I went to that because I wanted to see, now Recycle BC is MMABC, that a number of you know who they are. They've renamed themselves, which I think makes more sense. People now know what they do rather than the acronym that they used before. They talked a lot about future plans, and one of the things that we may have to consider and that will be discussed at the regional district that we have to get our heads around, and the regional district has alluded to it, is changes in landfill acceptance and fees in order to restrict within the next couple of years what actually goes up there. What goes there now, that may change, and that's to get people to recycle more and or find alternative uses for some things. So they may actually charge a higher fee on certain things and or say that you can't put it in a landfill. And I think we all know why they're moving in that direction, because the landfill, as I've mentioned, just like I've talked about banging the drum on water, the landfill has about 10 more years. But if we put in programs to recycle and or reuse and or multi-purpose what we buy, then the landfill will be lengthened further. Because remember, if we shut down the landfill, we have to find an alternative landfill site, or we have to ship out our garbage. So remember that as a community, you have to think to yourself, we have to find alternatives, because shipping our garbage to somebody else might not be as responsible as some may think it is. So Recycle BC was talking about some alternatives to get ahead of that. We also need to turn our mind to the fact that even though a number of years ago we didn't join their program, that they actually didn't enforce some of the rules that people were afraid of within that document that we didn't sign up for. So a number of communities joined, the rules weren't enforced, so they were able to get the funding from Recycle BC. And I also should mention that a number have joined since their program. I believe that if we would have joined Recycle BC, or if we join them very soon, that we can use the money that we get from them to defray our recycling program or create additional recycling programs that are paid not by our taxpayer, but from without our community, from Recycle BC. And if you want to know where they get their money from, they get it from the producers, the big retailers that ship out appliances to us. They pay them money to handle the cardboard and that's part of the rules of the government, part of a government law. So that's where the money comes from. And so there's all this money sitting there that they redistribute to municipalities, and we should probably look at, and I'm sure a report will be coming forward soon, hopefully from our staff, to be part of that program, because I think we've left money on the table. And those that say, well, the program was too strict, just remember that a number of municipalities have joined when they didn't originally because they realized it was a good program that brought in outside money to help with their recycling programs. So I just wanted to say that's what I found out there. The other issue that, and I've sent council stuff on it, is plastics is a big issue in the world. That's a big issue, is what do we do with plastics? But the money that we could get from them may help us put more of a recycling stream within a plastic stream within our recycling stream in order to get that out of the environment and send it to the proper people to melt down to pellets and reuse. So that's part of my report from the regional district. A couple of council members have referred to the meetings that have happened in the regional district. Budgets is an interesting one because they sort of did a preface to the budgets, and documents were provided, and council members that are at this meeting also were there to see what was coming forward. The one thing that we should turn our minds to, which is an item that was presented to us, as library funding. That was a huge ask. So just be prepared for that, because I always find, and I don't mind if they hear this, because they can talk about it with me, I always find at the regional district, a lot of times they'll approve that because we're the big funder. So they say, well, we'll approve this little piece and then you guys have to come up with the rest. So it's kind of probably a little bit humorous to them, but so there's two pieces to it. Approving the library budget, which is larger this year, we've all heard, above 30% the request. And then at that level, and then also it coming to our council for the Sechelt portion, which is a large piece. So be ready for that and turn your minds to that. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Before we move on to item 12, I would like to go back to our discussion around the dates. We haven't made an actual resolution as to the considered dates for the public hearing and special meetings. So could we have a resolution, please? Thank you.
Sure, yes, I've heard from the mayor that he is indeed watching this proceedings and via the internet, and he's more than okay with a Wednesday morning. So whatever is chosen by council, he's okay with. 7 a.m.
Yes, Councillor Seegers.
Okay, I looked at my calendar. I'm booked from 10 o'clock on that day, so I would request that it be 9 o'clock in the morning.
Is that a motion?
Yes, please.
9 a.m. for, we're talking special meeting. Do you need anything further in that resolution?
No, that's great. Thank you. Just moved and seconded.
Seconded? All those in favor? Now, do we also right now need to make a special meeting for the evening of December 20th? That's our regular council. Okay, well done. Now we can go back to our agenda. Item 12, release of closed meeting items and council correspondence. So we'll start with page 181 to 222. Council correspondence. A motion to receive? We've had that moved and seconded. Is there anything you want pulled out or special action on before we pass the motion? Councillor Seegers.
I'd just like to bring number 5 and number 6 to council's attention. We have asked staff to come forward with a bylaw with regards to parking fees at Porpoise Bay Wharf. So these letters would be pertinent to the discussion when that bylaw comes forward.
Thank you. Anything further? Yes. Corporate.
Madam Mayor, just a note that item 3 under correspondence, the letter from AVIC, I guess we could call this sort of first call for resolutions for AVIC. The deadline for resolutions is February 14th, so council has some time, but I just kind of wanted to highlight that they are asking for resolutions.
Thank you for the reminder. Anything further? All those in favor of receipt? Thanks. So now we have release of closed council meetings. Item 12.2. And I need a motion to release these motions. Moved and seconded. Comments or questions? All those in favor of the release? Thank you. No emergency items. I look to a motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. Thank you. And I see we have questions from the audience. Yes, Pam.